Hello, guys. Welcome back. This is another Roma Press live stream. We are here to preview the upcoming match against Juventus at the Stadio Olimpico on Sunday. A very highly anticipated match, one of the key games in this final stretch of the season, as Roma want to compete for top four until the very end, and somehow find themselves in a position to do so despite the poor start to the season. So let me welcome you all here. I wanted to once again clarify that I'm doing these live streams as a substitute for the podcast. John has asked me to take over. He's dealing with a bit of a medical situation, so I'm taking charge of this, and I keep thinking to myself that it just doesn't make sense to do a podcast on one zone. That's probably the saddest thing that exists on this world. We have too many podcasts where people are just talking to themselves. So it would be fun, and it would be much better to have an interaction with you guys, the people that watch us and follow us on YouTube. This is a reminder, of course, that as the live stream goes on, you're all very much welcome to write any comments, any questions you may have in the chat, and I'll be reading them off as I continue. And obviously, if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do so, because this is where you'll get all the notifications for the live streams. You get access to the video episodes of the podcast once John is back and we can get back into the groove, and hopefully that will be soon. For now, however, I thought that we'd gather here almost as around a campfire. Well, I just said so. Maybe I should fix like a message. That's I just said it. There is no podcast because John is unavailable. He's dealing with a bit of a medical situation, so he's asked me to take over, and I do not feel that a podcast makes sense if half of the podcast is missing, right? So I want to make up for these episodes with the live stream. So thank you for bearing with me. Thank you for understanding. I also apologize on John's behalf, but sometimes you have to deal with certain circumstances, and you have to find alternatives. So I think that it is still worth to meet here and have a conversation on here, rather than to have me talk to myself for half an hour and then release it in the name of a podcast. So I want to welcome everybody that is here. Good evening. We have people from all over the world. So I'm currently recording this from Warsaw, Poland. It's a beautiful day outside. It's past 6:30 p.m. and it's incredibly sunny. So good evening. Welcome, everybody. Danvezda. Hey, Andy. Good to see you making live streams more. I hope you keep doing them. I for sure. No worries, Will. I totally understand. It's the thing of live streams. You people hop on and something can get lost in the mix. I should probably, I don't know, write a message in the chat and fix it so that people know that the live streams are done in order to compensate for the podcast episodes that will not be released this time around as well, just because I'm not comfortable in doing a podcast on my own. I don't see anything worthwhile in it. So you will have to bear with me. And again, thank you so much for your understanding. I hope that John will feel better. Thank you so much, Aaron. I always tell him when I finish these live streams, I always tell him that people ask about him. That means a lot. So it's always great to know that we've got your support no matter what. So thank you so much, guys. 10 Roma fans and Andy. Absolutely. It all starts with 10 Roma fans, but then it grows. You'll see as time goes on, probably people from New York tuning in on their lunch break. It's the most Roma thing that we don't face Thiago Motta's team. Yes. So perhaps we should get started a bit on that note, because it's absolutely true. Juventus have been a mess more or less since November. So just about when Roma were ready to turn it around with Ranieri, who came in late November, Juve started losing their grip with Thiago Motta at the helm. It seemed like Juventus, much like Roma with De Rossi, were ready to embrace a new identity, a new plan. Thiago Motta, the architect of Bologna's success last season, Bologna's historic season where they achieved Champions League football, crazy. And Juve seemed to really be into that, into going into a different direction as opposed to Massimiliano Allegri. Everybody knew him, everybody knew his philosophy. Thiago Motta was a breath of fresh air, and Juventus went out of their way to get an agreement early on last season. I mean, I do believe that they got an agreement with Motta somewhere around February, and then just formalize the agreement at the end of the season. But it was all written in the stars that Motta would join Juventus. Cristiano Giuntoli, the sporting director, was all in for him. It seemed like Juve, just like Roma with De Rossi, were headed into a different realm. And yet something broke, and I would say right about November, something broke. The results started to decline. They had that streak of some an unbelievable number of draws, and they were all disappointing performances. And it seemed like Thiago Motta couldn't get a read on the team. And, Juventus, again, much like Roma, did not have the patience to let Motta figure it out. And so they went out of their way and they got Igor Tudor, whom I was very critical of in the past, but I do think that with Marseille and even with Lazio, given the mess they were in at the time, he did quite well, and was not an impressive game against Genoa, but they got it done. That is always what matters in those situations. Can the team react? And this is going to be the real test for Tudor and for Juventus. So it's not a good moment. We we were hoping to get a Juve that was perhaps insecure, afraid of going away, playing away. Maybe some tension in the locker room, definitely between Motta and Giuntoli and Juve's management. Definitely between Motta and the players, there was something going on. So this is not ideal, facing a Juve side that is fighting for the same stuff that you're fighting for in the final weeks of the season is not ideal, especially if you consider that they have a man, not only, again, just Tudor may not have the reputation of Ranieri, but he means something within Juventus, right? Tudor has a reputation of Juventus. The fans love him. There is a certain warmth around him. It's the prodigal son returning home, right? With and having this opportunity to prove himself on the big stage. Let's remember, Tudor was a member of Andrea Pirlo's staff during Pirlo's coaching tenure at Juve. It did not last very long. I think there were, again, some disagreements behind closed doors, and Tudor seems to be the guy who has a lot of disagreements. But here is his chance, and he's coming to the Olimpico to prove the doubters wrong. So let's see. John is getting younger every podcast. It's unsurprising the pill he took has side effects. Yes, guys, it's the substance. Thank you, Roman. That's good. Did you hear that Val Kilmer died? Such a great actor as well. Yeah, absolutely. Val Kilmer, very unique performer. Just a very, very unique performer who's it seems like he was there forever, and it seems like he had the face chiseled to be a Hollywood star. And yet he wasn't, even though he played in iconic movies such as Top Gun and was even Batman. I don't think he ever got really the chance to fully express himself. He was unbelievable as Jim Morrison in The Doors. That's a performance of his that I recommend, even though I think the movie's bad. But I love him in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and The Spartan. So if you haven't checked those out, check those out. And obviously Heat. I mean, Heat, but Heat is a classic. So, but he is the one who says the sun rises and sets with her. So That's a shout out to one of my favorite quotes. I hope Juve still have some problems and that present themselves in this match. Well, with just like with Roma, problems don't just fade away at the snap of a finger, but a reaction, and especially in the final weeks of the season, a reaction is always needed and is always expected. Perhaps again with Genoa, it wasn't a great match, but I do think that if you raise the stakes, such as going away to the Olimpico, playing in a packed stadium, sold out crowd, against a team that, just like you, is trying to get into the Champions League, you will automatically raise your level. And Juve have the players to do so. Cambiaso, Douglas Luiz, they have both recovered. They will both be available. Those are two important players for Juve. They have Yildiz, they have Vlahovic. Whether you like them or not is a different matter, but this is still, it's a quality Juve side, which is again why it's so mind-boggling that a manager like Thiago Motta, who proved himself with Bologna's squad last season, couldn't repeat that miracle with a team that was definitely up there in terms of quality. So this is what we're looking at, guys. Roma are able to recover Zeki Salik. That's an important addition to the team, given that Salik was so pivotal in those weeks leading up to the match against Athletic Bilbao. Losing him, I think, definitely put Roma in a more difficult position, because I'm not. Again, we should never go to could have, should have, but if Salik is there and if he plays in Bilbao, Mats Hummels doesn't start, and we know what happens, right? So, but that's the positive news, is that in a situation that sees Roma without Rensch, without Saud, Zeki Salik is back with the squad. It looks like he will also get the start. There are newspapers that argue that Roma could field a 4-3-3 with perhaps Stefan El Shaarawy involved from the first minute, in order to sort of bring in someone with experience, someone more defensively minded than, say, Sule, right? So that's what we could be looking at. I think basically every single newspaper today had a bit of a different lineup prediction. There are some that argue that Mats Hummels will still start. There are some that argue that Shomurodov and Dovbyk will start together. And then the question obviously is whether Lorenzo Pellegrini makes an appearance or not. So that's what we're looking at. That's the kind of messy panorama that we're dealing with. With Dybala being out, it's a big negative, but at the same time, Roma really can do a lot of things. They can play around with the starting formation. Perhaps that is not a big positive, as we approach the final weeks of the season, so we would like to see a consistency in the starting lineup. But at the same time, I think it's good to test these guys, see what they're made of, and especially in a game of such high stakes. You can't go wrong in trying to assess who's got the goods, who's going to deliver you the result you want, the result you need. With 1 week of rest, everybody more or less should be on the same level. So I think that's what interests me, and that's what I want to see. Roma on Sunday is definitely not a team that is lethargic. I know that the record at home at the Stadio Olimpico is more favorable to us than to Juve, but you cannot take these games for granted. The last thing I need for Roma is to come out looking sleepy. If we lose this game, I don't think we have a chance at top four. Well, that applies to any any of these upcoming games, really. No, for sure. Again, this is the kind of margin of error. This is the minimal margin of error where if we slip up, it's done. If we slip up, not only are our chances basically down to zero, but just the whole feeling around the team is down. Like there's just no coming back from it. I can already imagine the newspapers. I can already imagine the morale of the fan base. Any small mistake right now as we approach these final 8 games will result in a major breakdown. So on so let's hope that we can avoid any kind of breakdown slash meltdown, please. Never thought I'd be happy of seeing of Salik being back in the lineup for my lifetime. Well, it's funny, right? Because it seemed like he was always the guy that people pointed fingers at to say that, oh, look, how can somebody so mediocre start consistently? And yet it paid off for Claudio Ranieri. Ranieri saw something in Salik. He started to give him more responsibility, and Salik really came through. So when he went down, it did feel like a loss. And I think that, despite getting the results we got in recent weeks with his absence, it was still felt. So this is a big credit goes to Claudio Ranieri for believing in this, believing in the fact that each one of these guys has something. Even someone like Salik, who was definitely not up there for, again, a player whom you could call crucial for the team. And yet here we are. We rejoice at the thought of him being back in the lineup. It's sad that Wrench is not available yet. Having the possibility of more options at the right side, especially without Alexis, would have been at least a little comforting. That's right, Jeroen. You remind me that I should also remind the chat and the people watching that, yes, Roma will be without Alexis Salzmakers because he's been suspended following the recent yellow card. Is it just me, or has Pellegrini sold his soul for that Lazio derby goal? He's been so frustrating to watch. Definitely, if there is one player that Ranieri hasn't been able to get back on track, because keep in mind, even Brian Cristante, a guy who was this close to leaving Roma in January, a guy who had been out for a month and a half due to injury. Remember, he goes down against Atalanta. He comes back, I think, near the end of January. So that's a month and a half for a guy who basically never missed so much time for Roma. It seemed like everything was written in the stars for him to leave. Even Cristante was able to get back into presentable form with Ranieri. Pellegrini seems indeed like a lost cause. It seems like we're constantly working on Pellegrini. It seems like Ranieri is always called upon by the media to explain something about Pellegrini, to talk about him, to try and get him amped up. Because if there is one guy in this team that is not able to break through this sort of crisis that the team experienced early on in the season, that's Pellegrini. Pellegrini is definitely still reeling from whatever happened between September and October. And that is very disappointing, because especially with Paulo Dybala being out, we should not be in a position where we think to ourselves, well, will Matias Soulé save us? Will Tommaso Baldanzi save us? Attention should be pointed to Pellegrini, who, again, will have a very important decision to make this summer. Inter, Napoli, they're both interested in him. His agent is definitely pushing to get him out. Roma had already an agreement with Napoli before that Lazio derby where he scored. That goal changed everything. So it's quite an odd situation, especially given that this guy is your captain. What do you think is going to happen with Pellegrini? Is he going to start? Well, I do think that in a game of this caliber, Ranieri is going to try and send a message to Pellegrini. But this, again, kind of like with the derby, with the derby, he was not supposed to start in the derby, and yet he did start. He had one foot out the club. Ranieri confronted him on the morning of the game. They talked it out. They were able to come to an agreement, and Pellegrini told Ranieri flat out, "I'm ready. I want to start. I'm hungry. I want to make an impact," and he did. So who knows if they're going to have this same conversation tomorrow. That is definitely a situation to keep an eye on, because it is a situation that I think bothers not only us fans, but it does bother a bit the locker room. At the end of the day, this is your captain. This is the guy that you're supposed to follow. If he sticks on to the bench for the remainder of the season, what kind of message does that send? Being happy about Selig being back just gives a clear example of what Ranieri is capable of. Absolutely, but that's the point. We spoke about it. By bringing Ranieri, Ranieri was able to achieve the miracle with Leicester, not because that was a super squad. Obviously, they had a lot of talented guys who would go on to play for many important clubs, win a lot of trophies. Sure, sure, sure. But Ranieri was the guy who walked into that locker room and made everybody believe that they could win the Premier League title, that they could aspire to something greater than just staying up in the Premier League. So this is a guy who thrives in these situations if you, again, then give him a squad that has quality. Because, again, guys, I mean, we have a lot of players that, may have lost themselves along the way, but that does not mean that they're bad players. Think of Justin Kluivert, who's thriving in Bournemouth, and think of Zeki Salik, who was a quality player for Lille, and then it comes to Roma and faces a difficult situation, faces so many ups and downs and moments where he's just not being utilized at all, to moments where he's constantly playing. And on that right side, he alternates with Rick Karsdorp, and then sometimes the formation requires Mancini to play as a right back. It doesn't make any sense, but whatever. So there are definitely players there who can be useful, and I think Ranieri excels at making everybody tick, making everybody functional to what the whole team is about. Guys, if you haven't given a thumbs up to this live stream, please do so. Give it a thumbs up, like it, so that more people can see it, more people can tune in. Thank you so much. Let's see. This whole Pellegrini drama is so Shakespearean. Well, again, it's always like that when you have a player who first of all, who comes from the youth sector, that immediately it puts an incredible amount of pressure. Plus, he's a local boy, Roman through and through. He came back from loan with this idea of, oh, he got better, now he's with us. He went through so many spells where we thought we'd figured him out, and then we didn't. And he'd have an unbelievable season followed up by a very disappointing season. And then that whole thing of him taking over the armband from Edin Dzeko, that was huge. That was a huge moment, and it's heavy, man. It's really heavy. Being the captain of Roma is heavy stuff. Not for nothing, a lot of players who've worn this armband have lost themselves. Unless you're a generational talent, an iconic player like De Rossi, like Totti, it's gonna weigh on you. No matter, even if you're Edin Dzeko. Edin Dzeko wore that captain's armband many times, and it weighed on him. There was greater responsibility on him. He had to be held accountable on certain occasions, and he didn't want to, and hence we got Pellegrini being the captain. So it's a heavy reality for any player. To me, it's a disappointment that this happens in a season where everybody's bad. Now, I'm not going to say that everybody's good, but most of the team right now is doing very well. We have some really standout performers in Miles VR, in Manu Kone, in Evan Dika. These guys have been the most consistent, I would argue, players this season. We have Artem Dovbyk, the guys who still work hard, perhaps sometimes have some low points, but they're also able to make an impact. I mean, gosh, Artem Dovbyk gifted Roma 15 points on his own. So someone like Pellegrini, given his status, given everything that he's done for Roma, including leading Roma in that Conference League campaign, being named the Conference League player of the competition, and leading Roma to their first trophy in God knows how many years, that was huge. But that's a huge thing also to live up to. And right now I just don't think that he's got the confidence. It just feels like we are delaying the stuff that everybody knows that's going to happen. Pellegrini having to choose whether he stays or leaves. Roma are not gonna let him go for free, I assume, and I don't think that his entourage would be happy with Roma trying to keep him, despite, again, him clearly not having a central role within the team anymore. I mean, Ranieri can be as diplomatic as he wants, but if tomorrow Pellegrini is on the bench, then it you are sending a clear message: you are not the big time player that we thought you were in these situations. I mean, if Tommaso Baldanzi plays over him tomorrow, then that tells you all you need to know about the kind of situation that Pellegrini is in. One thing to keep in mind is that Roma has had a full week of training before this match instead of a game in between, which is good. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So this is, and Juve are in the same situation. So a lot of teams, well, except for Fiorentina and Lazio, of the teams that are competing for the same objectives as we are, well, they are dealing with this 1 game per week schedule. And it's Bologna now beat Empoli 3-0 in Coppa Italia. So Roma are definitely, again, we said it with John, this is, we are in a privileged position. I was in, we lost to Athletic. We dropped out of the Europa League. It hurt like hell. It hurt like hell because it shouldn't have happened the way it did. It was disappointing to watch this team play for 80 minutes, one man down, and just lose their grip on the qualification to the next round. It's disappointing, sure. But at the same time, this is the earliest we've dropped out of a European competition in 5 years. This is a situation that we're completely unfamiliar with, so this doesn't mean that Roma are definitely automatically a lock-in to be the favorites, but it does put Roma in an advantage position. It does put also some pressure on Roma, having to show that this does make a difference, that being able to rest for a week versus playing every 2-3 days, it makes a difference. I would like to believe that. It definitely gives more time for media outlets to speculate, because as we sort of move off from this preview of a game that will see both teams really trying to assert themselves and show that because Juve have just as much to lose as Roma right now. So but as we move off from this preview, it's interesting to also see that when Roma only play 1 game per week, it does give a lot of time for the media to speculate and speculate and speculate, because, as we know, Roma are still looking for the next manager. Claudio Ranieri, he said it in his press conference from over a week ago. He said, Gasperini will not be the coach, and we're not taking into consideration any of the names that have been mentioned in the media. Well, I must say, as as funny as that sounds, it's quite difficult to imagine Roma not taking into consideration all of the candidates that have been listed in the media, because there's there's like 20 of them. So if you don't consider those, the market for a coach becomes really, really small. So we are hearing all kinds of stuff every day. This morning I woke up and the news was that Maurizio Sarri is the favorite. But yesterday in the evening, I had to I had to read that Roma had already launched contact with Massimiliano Allegri. But yesterday in the morning, there was also the news that Stefano Pioli is Ranieri's favorite. So there we are. In less than 24 hours, we have 3 names being listed as the favorites. And it's, of course, it's it's unlikely that Roma are in advanced talks with all three of them. Of course, Roma have their favorite selection of coaches, but I do think that this selection is really made only together with the Friedkins. And for that to happen, the Friedkins have to be back in Rome. This morning there was a report by El Messaggero stating that Dan and Ryan Friedkin are expected to be back in the capital in the coming days, with perhaps the mission of going through this selection of candidates who could succeed Claudio Ranieri as the head coaches of the club. I still think that we should be proud of this Roma the last couple of months, even with being knocked out that quick from at least January. We've done so much that bigger teams can only be jealous of. Well, yes and no, in the sense that we can be very proud of the fact that they've been able to turn it around, that they've been able to collect so many points, that they've been able to keep this streak going, which should never be taken for granted. At the same time, I mean, it was expected of them to come to counter that horrendous first half, to try and show that, hey, you did not invest all that money in the summer to play this bad, and the whole team knew it. So yes, we applaud them, but as Gianluca Mancini said already in an interview released in recent days to Cronache di Spogliatoio, we know we've done nothing. Like, we've done something, and it thrills us, but overall, in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing. So, and I can understand that too many times we've gotten ahead of ourselves. Let's see. Nino, our good friend Nino. Ciao, Andy. How do you feel about the possibility of Allegri? Let me change my question. How do you feel about any of these names? Well, there's a lot of them, guys. There is a lot of them. Recently, Stefano Pioli has become the name that everybody's pushing, but that's mostly because he's eager to return to Serie A. Obviously, his agent is trying to get him back there, and he's on thin ice with Cristiano Ronaldo. So those are the reasons why sometimes we see the names that we see. You know, when we see all of a sudden a manager being spoken of so highly and oh, he's the favorite, he's this, he's that. You got always a team of people that are trying to, like someone like Massimiliano Allegri. I mean, this is a man who hasn't coached in a year. He needs to get back into it. He needs to prove himself somewhere else other than Juve. And he's got a whole team of people talking him up, speaking very positively, very highly of him. Now, he is a good coach, in my opinion. Allegri is a really good coach, especially in Serie A, just like that kind of, yeah, he's just got it down. Like, you know, it's not a science for him. It's just very simple. You either love him or hate him, but he delivers. He delivers with Juve. He delivered with Milan. Okay. At the same time, you know, you've got a whole team of people like Stefano Pioli, Maurizio Sarri. Maurizio Sarri also has a very talkative agent. This talkative agent is very friendly with a lot of people in the media. Maurizio Sarri has been out of a job since Lazio sacked him. He's been very picky about the offers that he received. I think he mentioned there was some interest from, I don't know, Fiorentina or something. But he was very picky, and he's still without a team. So obviously you're going to see his name being mentioned. You got Vincenzo Montella, who's also friendly with a lot of people in the media. Perhaps he's not too happy with coaching Turkey. I don't know. You got exotic names like Ernesto Valverde, because sometimes it helps to put an exotic name in there. There's a lot. There's also, I mean, there was even recent talk of Maresca of Chelsea. Yeah, but just look at the guy's contract at Chelsea. Look at the length of it. Look at the salary, and it's clear. It's a clear no. Pioli will just be sacked after 6 months for Roma. I can feel it. I don't know. I don't know. I've been Pioli's biggest critic, and to me, to see him be the face of this supposed change, of direction of this new project, seeing Stefano Pioli be the face of it would be quite underwhelming. because what I get the impression that Claudio Ranieri and Ghisolfi are trying to do is really get someone who will be happy to work with a young squad, a squad that will focus on cutting costs, on cutting salaries. It will become a reality this summer because the restrictions will be more severe than last year. So Roma will have to work with that, and there needs to be someone who's open to that idea, who will not protest that idea, and who will be able to still implement his ideas despite that, despite this confined setting, despite these difficult circumstances. But that's why the Champions League is so crucial again. So there is even talk of Vincenzo Italiano, but guys, Vincenzo Italiano right now is on the verge of playing in a Coppa Italia final with Bologna. He's done really well. And he did well even in Champions League. They played with dignity. He's done well in the second year in a row. Bologna are right there for the Champions League. So I don't know someone like Vincenzo Italiano after 1 year at Bologna would be willing to just walk out of that. What about Roberto Mancini? Well, Roberto Mancini, again, absolutely. You're also right. Roberto Mancini is another guy who's friendly with all Italian media, and his name has been pushed towards Roma many times when Juric was about to be sacked. He's been linked with Sampdoria in Serie B. This is a guy who also has lost his job with the Saudi Arabian national team. He felt like he was unfairly treated by Italy, by the national team. So he wants to also definitely get back into coaching in Serie A. What do I think of Roberto Mancini? I don't know, because Roberto Mancini hasn't coached the club in ages. Morgan, Forza Juventus. No, I'm sorry. This is the wrong place. But it's very nice that some people from the opposing teams are coming on. That's very welcome to everybody. But yes, we are looking at a list of names that is endless. We are looking at a Roma team that has everything to play for in these final weeks. We have the Friedkins coming to town, and they are definitely going to. Well, I would assume that they will first get the CEO done, because that's something that they will work on personally. And then the coach, is a choice made with along with Ghisolfi, Ranieri, and then the list is brought to Dan Friedkin's attention, and together they figure it out. But again, Dan Friedkin playing a very active role, just like he did when it was time to go for him to go to London and meet with Ranieri in person, try to convince Ranieri to join this team as interim manager until the end of the season. So Dan Friedkin taking an active interest in what's happening with the club and playing a part too. So we're looking at Paulo Dybala also. This is good news. Perhaps some people haven't caught it today. Corriere dello Sport came up with this I'd say brilliant piece of news that Paulo Dybala may be back for the preseason. The surgery seems to have taken the effect that it was expected to take. Paulo Dybala is responding well to it, and there is a chance of Dybala working individually leading up to the preseason. He's going to be working individually at Trigoria in June. And then when the team gets back together, the dates of preseason are yet to be established. But when the team gets back together, Dybala is supposed to be back with the squad. So initially there was a prognosis of Dybala being out until September. But now it seems like, well, at least according to what Corriere dello Sport reported, it seems like Dybala will try to accelerate. He's got the green light from the medical staff, who will try to get him to be ready for when preseason is underway. Dybala also well, we know that he extended his contract, but there is also talk of him potentially extending it even further. I think this is a guy who's just very comfortable in Italy, doesn't really want to mesh with any kind of reality, no matter if he says that he's interested in joining the Premier League, no matter if he says he wants to win this or that. He feels good in Italy. Whether Roma will be his home for the next couple of years, who knows? Right now, he's got a contract that expires next year. So we'll see. But it's definitely good news that we may be looking at a summer where we don't have this ghost-like figure of Dybala haunting us in the background and reminding us that perhaps we may be missing our most important player to start the new season with. So thanks so much, Andy. We hope John is doing okay. Good news on Paulo. Thank you so much, Martin. It means a lot. I always I will always I mean I always relay the best wishes to John, but I'll do that. He's always happy, and he's again sorry to miss this, but sometimes that's that's the circumstances. That's what you got to deal with in life. So thank you so much. I don't know why, but this season has felt so short. It felt like Juric was manager yesterday. Well, someone writes that Juric was never Roma's manager. Stop gaslighting us. That never happened. It's true though, right? Or perhaps, or is it recency bias? Because I do believe that with John, we were exhausted for those 2 months of the season, 2.5. We were dying. We were like, this is endless. Every week, twice a week, it was just pure suffering. And we felt every second of it. I do agree that, when the team is doing well, it's more relaxing, it's more enjoyable. You like it, you have a different feeling in your gut. You don't go to sleep, you don't with bad nightmares haunting you, it's a completely different feeling. So it definitely has felt shorter in recent months. Where the hell is Miles Viar's new contract? Good question. They're still negotiating, but you know why they are negotiating? Because someone like Miles Viar knows that his value is up through the roof, that a lot of teams are looking at him. The Roma also know that. The Roma also know that there is a lot of teams interested in him, but Roma also know that they are only capable of paying him a set amount. As I said, the restrictions will be in order. The club will once again have to focus on slashing the salary budget. So this is what we're working with. Sviar has his request. Roma have their idea of an offer, and it's always a push and pull. No matter the relations between the player and the club, these things take time. They're difficult. They require some sacrifices. Sometimes it's the player who lowers his demands. Sometimes it's the club that tries to raise the offer. So, but they're definitely in contact, in negotiations, according to the latest reports. That's very true about Dybala, thankfully. However, I think VR will be that new worry. Oh, so you're saying, that people will be worrying about whether Miles VR stays or goes. Yeah, I would say it's between him and Ndika. Those are two players that have drawn quite a bit of interest, and we are looking at again, depending where Roma are placed at the end of the season, some choices will have to be made, or some players definitely will be pushing to leave. At the end of the day, if you're Miles VR and you got Bayern Munich breathing down your neck, if you got Chelsea looking at you, whoever, you will be tempted to leave this reality. Roma is a wonderful team, but there is, again, sort of dimensions to this whole sport. Thank God Juric was our manager yesterday. Yes, having Juric was like being in the twilight zone. Yeah, poor guy, and poor guy is not doing too well in the Premier League. In fact, he recently came out saying, "I need Southampton to win a game because we cannot go down as the team with the worst record in Premier League history." And so it's been quite a season for a guy that's done fairly well with Torino in recent years, and I think got them above their expectations. This season has been quite the disaster for Juric. I don't know if he'll recover from it. I think he'll need some time on the sidelines, and probably we'll see him back in Serie A at the bottom of the table, taking over mid-season, some team. Um, we hope at least that the bulk of a new contract is not agent fees, damned UEFA. Well, Roma are one of the top teams in Serie A in terms of agent commissions. So last season they spent 17 million on agent commissions. So it's part of the game now. Unfortunately, it's part of the game. It's how it works. It's how it works. I will always remember that Juve got Emre Can for on a free transfer, but in the end they ended up paying again 16 million commission fee. I mean, it's just crazy. But it's a reality that is shared by many. Look at Inter, look at Juve, look at Milan. They all do their deals with friendly agents. Why? Because, yeah, sure, they pay the agent commissions. Do you think that Enzo Leffe, Hermoso, Dal are going to be back in the team after this season? They're all on loan, or will they leave immediately? Hermoso wants to stay at Bayer Leverkusen. I think he's found his dimension there. Right now, he's sidelined until the end of the season with a season-ending shoulder injury, but he wants to stay. He doesn't want to be back. I think Samuel Dal wants to stay where he can play, so Benfica looks like the good option for him. Roma can always Benfica have an option, and I think Roma have a counter option, if I recall correctly, so buyback option. So we will see. Enzo Leffe has been injured. He was doing well, but he's been injured, so that's that. And I think he's got an obligation included if Sunderland qualify. If they achieve promotion, then Enzo Leffe, I think the obligation, his contract is triggered. So fingers crossed that happens. I think those are three players that it just didn't work out. I did like, for example, Enzo Leffe. I thought he was fine, and I think he deserved a chance. But sometimes it works like that. You win some, you lose some. Hermoso as well, a guy who came in with this sort of air of a free agent, whom everybody seemed to want him. Everybody was after him. Bologna, Galatasaray, Inter, everybody was after him months and months. And then in the end, Roma got him. And it just didn't work out. He never got into a groove. It didn't help, just like it didn't help with Hummels that the team was doing so bad in the first 2.5, 3 months of the season. So Samuel Dahl as well. He paid the cost of just not being ready for that kind of stage at a moment where Roma were doing so bad that they could not afford to take a chance on him. Would love if Dal stayed. I'd be very intrigued. I'd be very intrigued because, I mean, he went from playing 0 minutes for Roma to playing in the Champions League with Benfica, so then facing Barcelona. So we're talking about a player that was that won best. I think he won best young player of the Swedish league. He's been doing very well in Portugal. He's found his groove. He's found his mojo, but he just wants to play. Can Roma guarantee him playing time? That is always the question when it comes to young players. Roma have to make a decision, and very often they don't. They hesitate, and we lose talents, or we lose players who think to themselves, well, I can do a better job somewhere else. I hate how it's always the same with Roma. Never sure if our best players will stay, always unsure of top four. Well, Jerome, that's I wouldn't say that's been the case for the past few seasons. With the Friedkins, that's changed a bit. They've made their point. They've been able to keep Roma afloat despite a lot of pressure from UEFA. For the past few seasons, we have been able to keep our best talents. I mean, Nemanja Matic leaves as a 35-year-old, but not because Roma are selling him, but because he's pushing to leave. So that's about the only instance where I recall Roma giving away one of their best players, perhaps Roger Ibanez, though he was very highly criticized. So we're talking about, a summer that definitely, I think, will see Roma make certain sacrifices, but It again depends on this Champions League qualification. I'm not gonna say that everything hangs in the balance, that everything depends on this match, but it's unbelievably important that we win on Sunday, that we do not lose face, that we do not lose momentum and morale, because you cannot make a false step in this race. If you make one small mistake, it will haunt you for the rest of the season. Roma have had plenty of regrets in Serie A in recent years. They cannot afford any more of them. Too many times we've seen Roma drop points in the league, especially in the end of the season, because they would focus their attention on European commitments. Great, that worked fine when we would go to a Europa League final or when we would win a Conference League trophy, but it cannot do when you're only playing once a week. So this is what we're dealing with, guys. As I'm closing this live stream, we are facing Juve on Sunday. If John is still out of action, I'll be there after the game. We'll see each other. We'll be here to experience all the drama together, whatever drama it is. We'll be here together. In the meantime, guys, thank you so much for, again, bearing with me, understanding that sometimes there are these circumstances where it just doesn't make sense for me to do a podcast on my own. So as an alternative, I'm relying on these live streams to keep up the contact with you guys. I hope that that we can get back to doing the podcast with John soon, depending on his situation. In the meantime, as always, thank you so much for the support. If you like what we do, sign up for our Patreon. If you would like to subscribe to this channel, then do so, because this is where you get all the Roma Press videos. And as always, guys, thank you so much. See you soon, and Forza Roma.